Hello everyone, it's me again. Thank you for being with me, and these are the colours I'm going to use for this demonstration. I first used the fine line masking fluid applicator to do a couple of scribble lines across the page, and I let it dry. Now I'm sorting through some photographs that I might be able to use. I pre-wet my page partially with a haki brush, and using my dagger brush, I now start flicking in my colours. They're a mix of cadmium orange and scarlet lake right now. I'm not going by anything in my photographs, I'm just flicking the paint on, making sure that I leave a lot of white paper and all of the negative spaces are interesting. That's more important for me. Now I'm using sap green and French ultramarine, and I work it randomly throughout the composition, but I'm still very aware of the white spaces because they're what's going to help me when I'm trying to make flowers come out of this mess of colour. Don't try and take all those edges away, and don't soften everything. Some hard edges are needed. And in a minute I'm going to get my photographs out and just see where I might be able to place some flowers in amongst these beautiful colours. I don't try and make a botanical study of this flower. The line work is merely to give me a guide, and the stamens are the most important part for me. So I'm really going to concentrate on where to place those, because that's how you identify the hibiscus flower, those beautiful stamens. I'm using my number 3 round brush right now, which is the Silver Black Velvet brand, and I've added quinacridone gold to the mix of colours that I started with. That's the only new colour I'm using. And I'm using negative painting to try and bring the shapes forward. Now you'll see why I was so aware of those lovely edges that the first lay-in of paint gave me, because they are becoming the edge of my flower. And I just keep working around the flower shape this way, bleeding the colour out away from the edge of the flower, and I'm using the end of my paintbrush to delineate a few of the petals. And now I start painting a stamen in. It just gives me a start to this flower. And when you do the stamens, especially if you're going to have multiple flowers, make sure they're all going in different directions. Compositionally, I usually always go with a zigzag or a distorted S shape. And when you put the stamens in going in a different direction, that helps to create tension, and tension creates attention. So you want the viewer to follow the line of the stamens. So if they're all going in different directions, that's helping the viewer's eye work through the composition. So I'm going to systematically just keep working around my painting this way, doing the negative painting and working on stamens, and every now and then I'll stop and have a little chat to you. To get into the throat of the stamen area, I'm adding a little bit of permanent rose to my mix of reds, and then I'm dragging those colours out from the centre of the flower with a damp brush, and that helps to give some shape to the petals. I'm using a palette knife now to cut back in or make a linear mark, which helps to guide the eye once again. All that tension creates so much interest for your viewer. Any linear marks, your viewer is going to follow through and use them as a roadmap. So be careful where you put those linear marks. So I've just drawn another flower in place, and I'm starting with its stamen now, and you notice it's going in the opposite direction to the other stamen. And then I'll start working on the throat of this flower, dragging the paint out from that center area. Helps to give the flower some form. I added a tiny little bit of permanent magenta with this colour to try and make it even deeper in value. The permanent rose wasn't quite doing it for me, and I've just used a thirsty brush to take out some of the paint from that stamen so it's still visible against the reds around it. Now a third flower is beginning to appear. So once again, the stamen area I start with, and I'm trying to differentiate one petal from another. So I'm putting in just a little bit of shadow colour in behind the frontal flower and see if I can push that forward. And this shadow colour is being used to formalise the flower behind it, to give it a bit of form, because that petal is coming forward at the viewer, so it's foreshortened. Once again, formalising the petal just by softly dragging that centre colour out to the outer edges of the petal with a damp brush, a clean damp brush. Now I'm using my negative painting methods to really push edges forward in places. So I have to get a darker mix of the colours. This is still French ultramarine and quinacridone gold, and perhaps a little tiny bit of the sap green pushed into that colour as well. But I haven't used as much water with the mix, that's why it's darker. I go back and forth between the flowers and the negative painting in the background, and I just want to keep on working over the whole composition. Don't labour too long over one area. You should always try and work the whole composition at one time. Just reinforcing the striations that are on that petal behind this frontal flower. Just a little bit of information is needed. Back to my negative painting. If I find that I've gone a little bit too wet in one area, I'll stay away from it for a little while and let it dry or soak into the paper before I go back to it. If you keep on working and working and working, you'll lose all the lovely clean colours that you started with. Now I'm reconstructing an area here because I didn't like the shape of that particular petal on that flower. So I took out some of its length with some negative painting. And here I'm putting the negative painting in at the bottom of this frontal flower so it can push that petal forward a little bit for the viewer. I'm just using my palette knife to scrape back into the wet paint, just on the side of the palette knife as well as on the point of the palette knife. And I really only use the first 1/2 inch to 1 inch of the knife itself. And now I'm working on this little flower and getting a few divisions between each petal by putting a line down and then softening the line. I always am very aware of the white of the paper though. I don't want to take too much of that out. That white of the paper is so important to keep your painting looking very fresh. And I do believe that if a watercolorist leaves a lot of white paper showing, the painting looks a lot more vibrant. So I've established that flower on the right hand side now, and I can get a little bit of negative painting under its front petal. And all the linear marks that I'm making help to guide the eye up to the top part of the painting. So I'm deliberately doing that. Just a little bit of line work is going to make the eye travel into that area. Back to my negative painting, I'm going to make a slight attempt at making this flower come forward a bit more, but I'd like some of the flowers to be less explained than the others. So I'm just doing this one in a very scattered way, so it's not totally explained. I've had to keep swiveling my painting around so that you're looking at it from different angles so you'll be able to see what I'm doing, because it's a vertical painting and the camera doesn't pick everything up when I might be working slightly out of camera range. So that's why I'm probably making you a little dizzy with all the twisting and turning, but I promise you in the end it'll work out. I hope so anyway. Now I'm starting to see a problem area right here where I'm pointing. It's cutting the page on that diagonal, and I think I need to bring the eye down further from that line to extend the eye down into the bottom 1/3 area of the painting. So with some negative painting I'm trying to do that. I think it's valid for you to see how something like this can be redeemed, because it often happens. You get so close to a painting that you don't really see it until you stand back from it. And I certainly didn't see what I was doing until I stood back and assessed this. Actually, I took a photograph of it and I thought, it doesn't look right in the photograph. That's not a bad idea. If you've got your phone with you, take a photograph of the painting and look at it with the screen of the phone. It isolates the painting for you. So just by looking at it on your phone screen or on an iPad, you'll see the mistakes a lot easier. You won't be quite so close to it. So it's all about just tweaking now and refining everything. Use the thirsty brush on some of the areas to take out some paint that I don't want. Just tweaking areas and refining things. I've removed all the masking fluid when the painting was completely dry. And thank you very much for staying with me this long. I hope you've enjoyed this demo. It's been fun painting it for you. And I hope to see some of your work later on, and maybe you'll feel enthused to try this technique. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. I like hearing your comments, so by all means leave a comment. Thanks for watching, guys. Till later. Bye-bye.